I'm Ronald, and this is Ronald's Kitchen. I'm sure you're probably saying, oh, this guy looks familiar. Well, you've seen me someplace other than Ronald's Kitchen. I was on Hell's Kitchen, too. 2nd season. Top 4. Yeah, that's me. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make my famous homemade macaroni and cheese. Now, Chef Gordon Ramsay, he says that macaroni and cheese is just for kids. He said it's a kiddie meal. But, I mean, he doesn't like much of anything. After all, right? I mean, he didn't like my souffle. That damn souffle. Anyway, there are 10 main steps to making macaroni and cheese. So your first step is going to be gather your ingredients. You're going to need some flour, some macaronis, some salt and some pepper, some breadcrumbs. I personally prefer Progresso. It's great for chicken, Parmesan, whatever. A stick of margarine. Blue Bonnet is my personal choice. Regular. It doesn't have to be regular. If you're on a diet, it can be light. Casserole dish to bake your macaronis in. Macaroni and cheese. Cheese is the next thing. You're going to want 4 cups. You can use 3, but I prefer 4. More is always better. I like mine as cheesy as possible. Some measuring cups. A big bucket to boil your macaroni in. Some milk, of course, a strainer after you're done boiling it, a knife, some smaller measuring utensils, and a really, really big spoon. The bigger the better, that's what I always say. Step number 2. You're going to want to turn on your oven. Mine is 3 clicks, yours may be 4, 5, or 6. You're going to want to preheat it to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Let that work its magic for a little while. Let's move on to the 3rd step. Over here at the sink, you want to take your bucket, preferably a pot, and fill it up with water. This is where you're going to be boiling your macaroni. You're going to want to fill it up really just enough to boil the macaroni, but you don't want to overfill it, because otherwise it'll boil over and that'll cause problems for you. And then you can come over here to the stove, put it on a burner, and just heat it up to about high or medium, in that range. You just want to boil it. When it starts to boil, we'll come back and we'll add in the macaroni. Now the 4th step in this process is beginning to make the cheese mix. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut 2 tablespoons of our margarine off of the stick, like so. You'll be able to tell that it's 2 tablespoons because of the little marks on the sides. You don't want to cut any more than that, you don't want to cut any less. That's exactly how much you want. And also, after you cut 2 tablespoons, cut it in half so that you have 2 1 tablespoon segments. You're going to want to add them. You're going to want to have your casserole dish over here. You're going to want to have it at about low, maybe a little bit higher in order to melt it. Put your 2 pieces of margarine in, and that's going to take about a minute and a half for it to finish melting. And then you can come over here. You're going to want to measure out flour next to add to the mix. You're going to have to open your flour, and you're going to want 2 tablespoons. Now, you can use actual tablespoons, but I find they are less accurate in their measurements, so it's best if you have a measuring utensil like this. You're going to want to measure out your first one, and make sure you smooth it over. Don't get a huge chunk like this. That's like 2 tablespoons right there, although it's not exactly 2 tablespoons. So you're going to want to make sure, smooth it over, make sure it's 1 tablespoon like that. Add it to your mix. Grab another tablespoon. Smooth it over once again. Okay, now after doing that for about a minute, you'll see here, come closer. You'll see that you have a kind of a pasty mix, like I said. This is the very beginning of your sauce. Next, you're going to want to add a cup of milk as a part of this step. You're going to want a total of 2.5 cups of milk when you're done, but we're just going to start out with a cup. Okay, now that you're done that, you can actually turn it up a little bit more because there's more liquid in there. And just keep on mixing it. You're going to do this for about 5 more minutes, and then you're going to add the next cup and a half, and we'll come back after we're done that. Next step, step 5, is going to be add the macaroni. The last step was a little bit complicated. It had a lot of parts to it. I hope you can keep up and you know what's going on so far. You're going to want to add 2 cups of macaroni. At this point, your water should be boiling. Your water should be boiling at this point. 2 cups of the macaroni, just pour it out. That's about 2 cups, and then you're going to want to add it in, like so. And now you will just stir for about 8 minutes. You're going to want, you can even set the timer. Set the timer for 8 minutes. It's always good to help you remember when you need to come back to it. I'd advise you stir it for the first 3 minutes, and then for the most part it can be left alone for the last 5. Now while that's boiling, you're going to want to continue to mix this. Make sure it is nice and... you want it to be creamier than it was originally, but you also don't want it to be too creamy, and you certainly don't want it to cake up, because if you don't stir it, it'll cake up and it'll harden, and it won't help your recipe at all. It'll just destroy it. Right now is a great time to add salt and pepper. I prefer salt and pepper, but you can add whatever secret ingredient you'd like. Just a couple shakes really gets the job done. Oh, hey, look at that! The timer went off. It's a good thing I said it. I would have totally forgot about those noodles and they would have burned. Now we're moving on to step 7, where we strain the noodles and we make sure that they're completely boiled before doing that. So I'm just going to stir this around real quick. Make sure that the noodles are bigger in order to be sure that they're fully boiled. Make sure they're bigger than they were before you got them out. That they're the same color and size throughout roughly. And they're going to be a little bit darker than when you originally got them out of the package. So these look about done. So we'll take them over to the strainer. There we go. You don't have to pour all the noodles out, you just have to pour all the water out. Keep that in mind. Now in order to strain them, you're going to do a combination of shaking the strainer back and forth, popping it up and down, and going in circles. So back and forth, circles, up and down. I personally enjoy the up and down the most. It's soothing and it's fun to watch the little things bounce. Now we're going to move on to step 8, where you add the cheese and macaroni to the cream sauce that we made earlier with the butter and milk. So you're going to want to open one of your 2 bags of cheddar. This one bag is 2 cups of cheese. That's a lot of cheese. I like a lot of cheese. Open the bag up and just add it in. It should be simmering on low when you do this, but after you add in the first part of cheese and macaroni, you can turn it off. So now that that's in, stir it really quickly. You don't have to stir as much during these parts of the recipe. Just a little bit. You're going to want to add half the macaroni as well. So just kind of eyeball it. It's not a major catastrophe if you don't get exactly half. Mix that around, and then you're going to want to do the same thing with the other package of cheese and the rest of the macaroni. Okay, so After you have added the last bit of macaroni and the second package of cheese, the 4th cup of cheese, you are going to want to add the breadcrumbs to top it all off. You can really just sprinkle them on. You want to get them on top. You want to make sure all your mixing is done at this point too, because you're not going to be mixing anymore after this. Don't sprinkle on too much. It could burn if you do. The top will burn off. And that's pretty much it for the mixing portion and all of the adding the food portion. So let's move on to the 10th step. And now we're moving on to step 10, where we bake the macaroni and cheese in the oven. Now, if you preheated the oven like I told you to, this step is going to be easy peasy, no problemo. Just get your oven mitts, open the oven up, make sure you have an area to place the macaroni and cheese. Pick up the macaroni and cheese with both hands and carefully place it into the oven. Do not, and I repeat, do not touch the hot wires or any part inside the oven, because you will burn yourself. Now that you've popped that bad boy in, it's time to sit back, relax, set the timer. 25 minutes about, roughly. 25 to 30 minutes, depending on what kind of an oven you have. Set it, hit start, and just wait it out. When the timer goes off, when you hear it, come back, look at your macaroni and cheese, check it out. Make sure that the crumbs are a nice golden brown, and you're going to want the cheese to have melted and kind of just form together into one solid mass of yumminess. And that's pretty much it. That's how you make homemade macaroni and cheese. It's great for any occasion, really. You can heat it up in the microwave for 30 seconds once you've made it, and have half a meal for you. Or you can take it to a friend's house for a potluck dinner. It's great for any occasion, really. And I'm Ron from Ron's Kitchen, and have a nice night, folks.